and the speaker to kindly take your seats as we begin the next session. Please take your seats. So next session talks about secure Satcom for air, naval and tactical operations. As modern operations depend on connected and integrated forces, resilient communications are becoming mission critical. This session explores how Satcom, quantum secure communications, and beyond line of sight connectivity enable air, naval, UAV, and technical ground operations through real-time coordination, secure data exchange, and mission continuity in contested environments. I would like to invite the chair and moderator, Lieutenant General Anil Kapoor, retired, board member, Technology Innovation Hub, PNT, governing body, IIT, Tirupati. I'd also like to invite the speakers, Brigadier Dr. Navjot Singh Bedi, veteran Indian Army, Mr. Siddhartha Abburi, Director Avantel Limited, Mr. Paul, Director Government Solutions APAC SES, Mr. Donald Chu, Managing Director APAC, Astranis Space Technologies, Mr. Suhas Gopinath, Founder and CEO of Globals. I request delegates to minimize movement during the session and please keep your mobile phones on silent. I request all speakers to keep their remarks concise and within the allocated time. I now hand over the proceedings to the moderator. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed a pleasure and privilege to be standing in Indian Space Congress 2026 and speaking on Satcom. Let me start with a small anecdote. When I was the DG Information Systems, maybe less than a decade back, we had the battlefield management system, battlefield surveillance system, information decision support systems and all that. And when we got together as a tri-service mission on it, we realized while software development was a comparatively low-hanging fruit, our problems stood around communication. And more importantly, Satcom. Because terrestrial communication have their own limitations. When you look at a tri-service environment, when you look at the Great Himalayan Range, you look at the Indian Ocean region, you look at aviation assets flying all over, I think to put all this together in perspective, it's very important to have a very resilient, secure Satcom. And we found whether we look at the space stack comprising GEO, MEO, LEO satellites, whether we look at ground stations, or we look at sensors and receivers embedded in weapon platforms, there was a huge, huge gap everywhere, a capability gap. Today, when I'm here and I've been hearing deliberations, I find that we are not very far from that gap. It continues to plague us. And therefore, I think this session is very important to understand that Satcom is a strategic infrastructure. It requires a whole-of-nation approach. Government, industry, academia have to come together to build structures, Satcom architectures, technologies that goes right from outer space to underwater and ground stations. And therefore, I think the challenge lies in Satcom, and I tried to put them together, where S stands for skilled manpower. Do we have a resilient and well-trained, competent human resource? A space engineering workforce? The answer is no. I'm with IIT Tirupati, and recently we got our act together, and we're starting a School of Space Studies, Because when you look at RF, when you look at RF on ground and we look at RF in outer space, they are two different things. And therefore, I think there's a dire need to look at the complete ecosystem. When you look at A, we talk of spectrum allocation, we talk of spectrum congestion. Today, AI, the artificial intelligence, is actually a very good panacea to solve this problem. And I think in the comedy of space, it's not only you can't talk of Satcom in isolation. You have to talk of systems of system approach. And therefore, I think whether it is spectrum allocation, spectrum congestion, and the whole gamut, I think artificial intelligence here will play a profound role in all the three systems, right from the geo, LEO, MEO, the ground stations, or these sensors and platforms, maritime, aviation, or land-based. So I think that's something which is very important. T stands for deep tech. When you look at tech in this, and I have Velan sitting here, who's championed indigenization, and my compliments to him and his team, I think we are largely ex-import. There's a huge import dependence, especially when you look at things like gallium arsenide or gallium nitride power devices, radiation hardened electronics. These are some basic building blocks and many more. High power amplifiers, RF sensors. I think this is another area where the academia industry have to get together to create a formidable deep tech stack for space. C stands for cyber threat. I think when you look at all network-centric operations, cybertronic attacks as we call them, I think cyber and EW are very rife when we talk of all this. And therefore, I think we need to look at jamming, spoofing, cyber intrusions in the complete comity of technologies and platforms which comprise use of Satcom amongst others. O is orbital competition and congestion. I think when you look at the whole space today, there's huge amount of congestion. End-of-life satellites, lot of space debris of different kinds. That is one end. The other is, today with Starlink and others coming up, I think there's a huge competition in this space. And this competition we have to be rife of as India. If we have to look at Satcom in India, I think we need to master the art of orbital constellations throughout LEO, MEO, and GEO, and the intertalking that must happen there with the ground system. And M stands for our limited manufacturing capacities and capabilities in this field. While production is just the beginning of an end, I think more challenges lie when you look at life cycle sustenance, technology obsolescence and technology upgrades that are going to happen. And therefore, to put this all together to see how we can merge technology with tactics when it comes to Satcom, I have a very illustrious panel with me today. They will share their knowledge of what they know, and they look forward to meaningful engagement with the audience here for whatever ignorance we exude and you identify it. With that said, I'll now request Brigadier Navjot, who's a huge name when it comes to Satcom, with profound experience in this. Navjot, just tell us and all that given the domain, we've looked at OPSIDUR, given the domain of multi-domain operations which is being talked of today, what do you think is the stack of challenges, both in terms of tech and operations, when it comes to Satcom? Over to you.
Good afternoon. At the outset, I thank the organizers for having invited me here to give a talk on this extremely relevant topic. Though our panel has been assigned a rather challenging time slot right after a very sumptuous meal. As alluded to one speaker in the previous session, Jay Duhan, if I remember correctly. Yet I'll endeavor to address this question posed by the session chair in as brief a manner and giving down some points. Kind of him, he had given the heads up, so could jot down some points, work on it. One of the biggest challenges, as he rightly said, facing the Indian armed forces in maritime domain operations would be creation of a network dependent force that is highly resilient. It works through disruptions and is able to deliver even in a degraded manner. A force that lacks tactical connectivity at the tactical edge would not be detrimental in the overall interest of the nation. So in the eventuality, though it seems remote that the Indian armed forces would face such, because we follow a layered system of communication as had been alluded to by General Rana as also by General Panu in the talks given in the inaugural, but one of which includes Satcom. However, for the sake of discussion, if only considered in isolation, then certain operational vulnerabilities will stand out in Satcom in a MDO. These are which I'll just list out and then I'll dwell on each in detail. One is the communication bottlenecks that you will experience during high intensity operations, which are likely to occur. Vulnerability in mountainous and remote terrain, which the session chair has already alluded to. Breakdowns in joint force communications when operating in an integrated environment, as is the want in the theater environment. Susceptibility to EW, communications will be targeted, will be degraded. It's a reality, we have to live through it, work through it. And degradation of long-range precision strikes, which again the session said, as we saw in Op Sindoor, most of these strikes were long-range standoff. So they will take place and the adversary will try to degrade them, and that's how Satcom can play a role. Again, maritime domain awareness, we have a large coastline, as also logistics and sustainment, very important, often neglected, but as the old phrase, the army marches on its feet, more on that later. And of course, we have reduced resilience against counter-surveillance threats. During the inaugural session, 4 of these aspects had already been dwelt on by 2 eminent speakers. So I'll just gloss over them in passing without spending much time. Coming to the first one, communication bottlenecks. Modern digitized battlefield generates a large amount of data, which is not just command and control communications. In addition, you have RT targeting data, air defense data, UAV surveillance data, targeting feeds, and of course, tracking data, besides the logistics and support data. Now all this, we know satellite, one of the biggest constraints or challenges is the limited bandwidth. So that is a constraint in a contested environment. Without sufficient bandwidth, commanders may be forced to prioritize. We may be forced to take a call, what is more important at the particular instant, and stream that bit accordingly. In an MDO environment, the speed of decision often determines the direction and the success. The second aspect, vulnerability in mountainous and remote regions. We have a vast geography. It includes Ladakh, the northeastern region. Again, these are 2 areas where General Pannu has a vast experience, he served there. With the IOR region, where one of the vice admirals here, he is aware. And of course, in various other contested environments. These regions suffer from the lack of line of sight communications, and where Satcom actually comes to play a major role. So if Satcom expansion lags, then the tactical formations in these areas may become dependent on fragile, often stretched relay chains, which could create a single point of failure, which is an aspect we need to address. A destroyed relay station or a damaged fiber connection may result in isolation of the forward post. Moving on to joint force integration, which is a flavor, integrated theater commands. Needless to say, we need good communications within the force. Now we are looking at a scenario where we need to work together not only within the 3 services, but with the space and the cyber command also. So we need communications that will work. The challenge is not merely moving information, but it should be moved simultaneously across all the service platforms, service domains in the correct manner in which is understood by all. Insufficient SATCOM may create a situation where information silos are there, so respective services are able to process the information, they have the information, but the same is not received in the correct manner at the other service headquarters. This all depends on understanding how each other services functions, understanding what they mean, what is the correct intent. The defining moment of MDO is that synchronized efforts. If the three services, and of course now space and cyber, are not in sync, this aspect may take a hit. Increased susceptibility to EW, electronic warfare. This is a given. There will be no future conflict that will be in the uncontested domain. In World War II, you heard of situation like complete air dominance, that went out. Then you had favorable air situation, again that went out. So like that, you may have favorable situations or superiority, air superiority is out, favorable air situation for a certain period of time in a certain area. So likewise, you may not have a contested environment for a limited time at a given place, but you take it that you will have to work through contested environments. So if SATCOM is targeted, then there will be reliance on the other systems like terrestrial networks, radio relays, so on. Now these are more susceptible to enemy degradation. So that is why we need adequacy of SATCOM resources. Now if our next aspect is degradation of long range kills, because most of we saw in Op Sindoor, most of the strikes were long range standoff strikes. Now it involves a 6-stage cycle. You have to detect, identify, track, decide, and assess, and again see what is the damage assessment. Now if your SATCOM capabilities are degraded, then there is a possibility that your long range precision may suffer, because the target data gets dated, it gets aged, delayed. Your precision strikes may not be as responsive, and your mobile targets may become difficult to reach. The maritime domain awareness needs no deliberation. For India, it is especially important. We have a large coastline and even a larger continental shelf. Shortage of SATCOM resources could limit real-time ship tracking, UAV control, maritime patrol, and fleet coordination. And of course, we also have now the triad which is there, which is effective. Logistics and sustainment blind spots. Often logistics is not given the importance, but as I said, the army marches on its feet. If you all recall, in World War II, one of the prime reasons that Rommel lost was because the Africa Corps, their logistics sustenance was not there in time as compared to his adversaries. So digitized logistics maintenance now need predictive maintenance, automatic supply chains, and real-time inventory visibility, which can be augmented by SATCOM. In an MDO, if SATCOM is targeted, the logistics, which is the Achilles heel of any armed forces, may take a hit. So if the systems are constrained, the commanders will have visibility at the headquarters, but not at the tactical edge. Last but not the least is the reduced resilience against counter-space assets threats. Now, vulnerability arises if SATCOM proliferation is limited to a number of satellites or so. Because if they are taken down or degraded temporarily or permanently, then you have reliance on other means of communication, which are more easier to be addressed, more easier to be targeted, the locations are known. Various ways in this can happen is, we are all aware, other than electronic warfare, you have cyber spoofing, you have dazzling, you may have blinding, and you may have jamming. A larger, more distributed SATCOM architecture, including military satellites, commercial partnerships, and proliferation generally offers greater resilience. The most common vulnerability is that emergence of decision-making mismatch. Sensors may become digitized, weapon platforms are increasingly precise, but command systems are though data-driven, yet the bandwidth is not there. In a scenario, India may possess excellent sensors and capable shooters, yet If the communication capability is not made also augmented, then it may be a challenge during contested environments. The force would be information rich but connectivity poor. So adequate resources need to be devoted to development of all fields of communication, including Satcom. For MDO, the connectivity is not merely a support function. It is the function. Okay, I'll just wind up. In future conflicts, the decisive advantage will begin to the force that can securely connect its sensors, decision makers and shooters across all domains under any conditions and at the speed of relevance. For India, Satcom is a critical enabler of that advantage, and its success will depend on exploiting a space when available, adapting when it is degraded, and to continue fighting when denied. The armed forces must master this balance and take the nation forward. Jai Hind, thank you.
Thank you very much, Navjot. I think it's very, very clear and candid what you brought up, that all command and control will fail if Satcom doesn't prevail. So I think that's a very loud and clear message in multi-domain operations. Let me call upon now Mr. Siddhartha. You are dealing with technology at the grassroots industry level. Now, have you identified some critical weak links in this chain which would help us navigate into indigenous solution? We're not looking at import, we're not looking at those kind of supply chains, we're looking at make in India, made in India, and the Indian footprint of Satcom. Just identify some critical weak links.
Jai Hind and good afternoon, everyone. I think the toughest session is always going to be the one which is post-lunch, and especially on a topic which is Satcom, where I think me and my fellow panelists can go on and on for a couple of hours. My name is Siddhartha. I'm from Avantel, and Avantel has been a pioneer within the country in terms of providing Satcom solutions to our defense forces. So over the last 20 years, we have had a great journey in providing these Satcom systems. And I'll answer with a why. So it's very important, like Sir said, in Satcom, the S stands for secure and self-reliance. We need to provide solutions using our satellites so that we have complete control as to when to use it and how to use it, and to also come up with regular day-to-day features as well. And in terms of that, the industry should also support the armed forces as per their needs and requirements. A story goes like this. 15, 20 years ago, using our satellite, even ISRO has said we cannot provide any Satcom services. It's a test satellite. We have worked closely with them, and then we have come out with a solution where it is a receive-only system. So we were just getting data rates in bits. I know in this day and age where you're talking about Mbps and Gbps and terabytes, we are only talking about bits within the country, where we first established incoming messages as a warning messages. Slowly over time, we have given them two-way messages and then given them voice calls. Now we're even giving them video calls, using the same satellites with enhanced technologies and coding methodologies. So till date, using our Indian satellites, we have provided more than 60,000 terminals deployed, both in armed forces as well as government entities such as railways, fisheries, and BrahMos, or any other things where it is IoT is also required. We pretty much supply most of these secure Satcom devices where it is completely in the control of the government entities as well. Now, coming to Sir's point in terms of, so we have the skill set, sir. We have the capability to scale up and manufacture. Those are not the key bottlenecks which, as an industry, we feel. We are also coming out with innovative solutions like sat phones now. We are having a POC as we speak, and the entire army, armed forces, convoy can also be tracked using Satcom and other technologies with complete efficiencies as well. But the limitations are, because being so close to the customer, and they have so many needs, especially in high seas as well as in forward areas, be it air, land, and water, ocean. So let's say you have procured a reconnaissance aircraft for billions of dollars, right? And a reconnaissance aircraft does reconnaissance. I mean, it captures these high load data rate pictures and videos. But what's the use if you cannot see that in real time to take real actions, where the data rates which are required to be at least in Mbps, but our satellites today are not high throughput satellites, nor SDR driven satellites. So they are fixed geostationary satellites. So the major limitation is to reduce the form factors to be even much more portable and convenient for our armed forces across all the platforms, as well as for high data rates. We need better, high throughput, latest satellites, which I think my fellow panelists will be talking more about on the space side, where what the new technologies are. But we need those high-grade satellites, as well as LEO constellations also being deployed. So unless we fix the bottlenecks in the space, we will not be able to provide reliable solutions where we know what the challenges are for the armed forces. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll come back based on the panel questions.
Thank you very much. I think very well covered. Let me now come to you, Paul. You handle APAC. Now, today with the kind of electronic warfare threats on satellite systems, even ASATs, which kill satellites, and the environment becoming very, very contested outer space, we've started talking or thinking about, multi-orbital interactions and integrations between GEO, MEO, LEO. What do you think are the challenges here, and what are the thoughts on mitigating these challenges?
Thank you, sir. It's always great to be here. Back, I was here last year for the first time. So look, it is true that we are facing interesting times through the conflicts that are already ongoing around the world. We can see that there are certain orbits that are not only contested but congested. I think the LEO belt is highly congested at this stage, with plans for more deployments over the coming decade, which will be even more congested. GEO has been around for such a long time, a reliable backbone of Satcom for the last 60 years. SES is the only operator today with an active fleet of satellites in MEO. Decision that was made 10, 15 years ago to activate it is paying off today, because the very fact of having it around and being able to switch orbits in crucial times is proving an absolute edge for the customers, and the defense customers in particular. So what we are actively working on and developing to go forth is to ensure that that technology becomes even better and better than it has been for the last, like I said, decade. So we, as a company, have plans to develop the next generation meosphere. Now, a minute about that is that this will be the equivalent of what we experience today in LEO, with very, very, I guess, a small form factor and cheap terminals, able to compete with high throughput services. But where it becomes interesting is that electronic warfare is very much active today, typically affecting the GEO satellites. So in the conflicts that we are experiencing around the world, you can see that there are, during the conflicts, there are phases where the GEO satellites are getting completely obliterated by strong signals and unable to function. LEO, a bit more difficult because they're constantly moving, but the MEO satellites are resilient in the way of the electronic warfare, to a point that they are still able to function. The new generation of satellites is going to be designed to particularly counter that threat, because it's very, very real. And the ability to jump from orbit to orbit is proving to be something that is become the norm. So the big race on the ground is to develop antennas and hardware to be able to switch automatically and seamlessly between orbits. So for those who are into manufacturers or design of antennas, I strongly encourage you to keep focusing on this. because we are approached by many providers around the world who are developing these systems for us, because there's a very, very strong demand from the customer base, especially defense markets, to be able to not only switch between orbits, but it's, the term today is multi-orbit, multi-band. And I think the holy grail of antennas today is going to be a system which is able to do that effectively at a scale and able to integrate with existing networks. So naturally developed resilience comes today with ability to switch between orbits and bands in real time, so you can very effectively mitigate the threats of being affected by electronic warfare or physical approaches. So geo satellites are also exposed to being approached by rogue actors, and then there is really not much that you can do today, that we know of, to protect these satellites. So there are multiple strategies that satellite owners and operators like SES are working on actively to ensure that customers can continue to receive high quality and safe services, because in critical times of conflict, that's what counts. So we can develop that discussion. Look forward to some questions.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that was interesting to hear multi-orbital, multi-band. I think that's where the future will lie for sure. Let me shift to Mr. Donald Chu. We had an interaction offline as well. You all have mastered the science and technology behind small satellites in the geo framework. Now, given the, should I say, race in the space age which is there today, where everybody wants to put as many satellites right from now, NEO, LEO, MEO, and GEO, how do you look at proliferation of small satellites today, both in terms of numbers and cost? How do you make it a very competitive option, say for India, if we were to look at opportunities and options for small satellites?
Thank you very much, moderator. First, thanks a lot, SIA, for inviting me here to be speaking and sharing you on the micro geo. But very quickly, a little bit of myself, because right on Paul's talking about multi-orbit. I'm actually one person that has been multi-orbit trained. So I've actually done GEO, MEO, LEO, and now I do micro geo. And what I see micro geo is, the next satellite innovations in the industry, and especially for India. Now, if you look at today, what are the challenges in the warfare? I will say three things. First, speed. Second, capital efficiency. Third, I call it granularity. So in other words, it's called proliferations of geo. Now, I'll come back to this, but I want to look at the India market in terms of the military segment today. Now, India military Satcom infrastructures today relies on a small number of very high value assets, the G7 series of satellites. These are very capable, assets. They are very good. But the problem is that, the modern operations demand more and more capacities, and they've outpaced, what this asset that you have today in India to deliver. Now, so UAV video feeds are needed more bandwidth. Beyond line of sight command and control for the dispersed forces. All these actually need a lot of bandwidth now. So the traditional model of the geo conventional satellite are not able to respond to such requirements. Now, in fact, talking about traditional geo model, typically they will ask you to commit to $500 million or $500 million on a 15-year on a single spacecraft. That makes sense, provided the operational requirements are stable and predictable. But in today's world, threat scenarios are different. It shifts within that military planning cycle. Over 15 years, it already shifted maybe 2 times, 3 times. And the traditional models cannot adapt to such changes. All right? Now, so it's important, now I bring you back to where I talk about the 3 topics: speed, capital efficiency, and I will call proliferation of geo. Now, speed. Can you imagine now, you actually can go on a contract to having an orbit capability. in less than 24 months. And in some cases, we are able to deliver even below 14 to 16 months. The recent signing that we had in Oman, a company called MB Group, from the time they sign the contract and the time they're going to get a satellite, it will be around 14 months. So that speed is very important in today's environment. Second, capital efficiency. Now, small satellites are a fraction of the traditional satellite. But what is more important about Astranis microjo? Do you realize that I keep saying microjo? By the way, microjo is a registered trademark of Astranis. So all thanks to all the members here who keep talking about microjo, you're actually referring to Astranis. Now, Astranis has actually come up with a very innovative financial model. Because today, if you look at the military budgeting, you will need billions of dollars to really build up the 52 satellites that is the plan. Astranis actually comes up with a subsidized, or you call it a subscription, a subscription model, if you look at it. Basically, you do not pay anything. You pay a small down payment and you only do not pay anything until we deliver the satellite to you that is ready for service. And you only pay a monthly service. And therefore, for the India context, you are able to come up with a very careful planning of the budget and be able to have a proliferated GEO satellite that you can move around. Now, then I come to the proliferation of GEO satellite, my third topic. Now, this is important for you to understand as well. I also want to coin a word called deglobalizations. I know a lot of people today keep talking about centralizations, easier to manage. But in today's world, actually, in the India context, a decentralized network is better. This is my opinion. Why? Today, cybersecurity, we heard about, VARSAT, KSAT was being compromised in 2022. Where the whole ground system was being attacked and cyber attacked, and the tens of thousands of data are lost. So this is important, therefore, for you to look at it. If you are having your naval, air force, armed forces all on a single infrastructure, once of the network is being compromised, there is a potential that the entire military communication will be compromised. So with an Astranis microjo at a 450 kilogram, we are able to put a couple of satellites, over the Indian airspace, working obviously with the regulatory, be able, to provide, a targeted capacity for naval, maybe over the Andaman Sea, right? And then maybe over the northeast area of India, for the Air Force. So at least this network are independent, but they still can talk to each other, all right? But at least, one network being compromised, the other network will not. Now, with that, I only have one more item. I call it the bonus point I'm going to give away. Now, what I mean by bonus, I want to ask a question. I like interactive. In today's world, do you think cybersecurity is a bigger threat, or do you think the ground segment is a bigger threat? Can I have a raise cybersecurity? Ground segment. Ground segment. Let me tell you why. In today's world, I want to bring you one step back. A lot of people keep talking about technology, we need to move forward. But today, because of the war, there is being the conflict of war, can you imagine, I know exactly where are your ground stations, your gateway. All you need to do is, I don't need to jam your satellite. I don't need to do cybersecurity. So that is actually a bigger threat. Now, Astranis, because we designed the satellite, we actually are able to do one thing that no one can do. It's called a gateway array. So we are able to do a 3x4 meter antenna that performs like a 9 meter. And on top of that, we also can do 2.4 meter gateway. So a lot of people know that it's transporter terminal, but Astranis is a transporter gateway. In the modern warfare, you need that capability to be able to move your transporter gateway so that your enemy actually cannot know where are the gateways. So there's something that I want to just conclude on that. Thank you.
Very nice. Very good. Okay, which takes me to Suhas, Gopinath. Now, he's talked of some threats which can emanate, comparing cyber threat with a physical threat. Yes, sir. Now, when you look at the whole satellite or Satcom ecosystem, right from satellite, ground stations, cloud infrastructure, and sensors, weapon platforms, it's all an ecosystem. Now, when you look at this ecosystem and the vulnerabilities of the ecosystem, whether it is cyber or physical, how do you think we could mitigate all this. What do you think are the mitigation strategies you could bring on the table as a founder
Sir, absolutely.
to make everybody feel very safe?
Yeah, I mean, I was so tempted to show one of the slides, but I've been restricted not to show the slide. It's not to scare the audience, but it was basically a demonstration. Yeah, it was basically on a demonstration on how at Cyber Command Center in actually Bangalore, we've been able to penetrate into Satcom terminals, which are deployed on ships, and it's technically from Bangalore, you are actually literally able to take a control of one of the ships that is actually on the high seas. And it's only because it's part of the R&D program that we were actually doing it. And I was just talking to my team, and as on today, about 50,000 Satcom terminals are internet exposed that are deployed on ships and at critical infrastructure. And unfortunately, I mean, I come from cyber, and it's exactly why when it was asked by Donald in case if it's a cyber security or a ground station, I mean, I'm in the business of breaking locks so that we can make better locks. So in our case, we've realized that the Satcom terminals that are actually deployed, at least in the maritime that I can actually tell you, is that it's a supply chain security is kind of taken care, but they don't patch the firmware. And we've seen a classic example in across the Ukraine-Russia war with Viasat Satcom terminals that were got compromised because of auto-configuration service, which in fact we have been asking NSCS to ensure that all the modems and at least the routers that are available in India, the auto-configuration service as a protocol has to be banned. But on the Satcom terminal itself, it's from a cyber warfare perspective, it's one of the attack vector that we see. And especially when they're internet exposed, they're highly dangerous. And so of course off the panel, I'm happy to show the slides that we intend to show, that from a Satcom terminal we could demonstrate how we could get into the propulsion system of the ship, or we could get into the comms of the ship or the crew data, which can be extremely dangerous. So it's technically you are able to take a control of a ship only because of a simple Satcom terminal that's not being patched. And we've got an OEM here as well, and I think it's extremely important that we do continuous monitoring of the Satcom terminals while we deploy it. Supply chain security can be assessed. As on today, I understand that in India, we even do not have a policy when we buy Satcom assets. We do not have a policy on actually taking S-bomb, H-bomb, or the C-bomb, which is crypto bomb. And we've also sent a policy recommendation saying that at least on the ground station assets, when the armed forces or the government sector is engaging with the startups, it's so important that the vendors do declare the S-bomb, H-bomb, and eventually the crypto bomb as well. So I think it's extremely critical, sir, and I think I cannot emphasize more than this that we are at a SOS phase right now where the Satcom terminal is internet exposed, they are not patched. As a company, we find across about 15 OEMs. As a company, we are sitting on, as a zero-day lab, we've identified at least 50 unpatched vulnerabilities in these, which means you can actually enter the Satcom terminal. I'm not talking of a DOS attack where you are actually disrupting it like a deterrence. You are able to stay persistent on the Satcom terminal, you are able to harvest on the communications, you are able to do a lateral movement into the other networks through a Satcom terminal.
Thank you, very nice. In fact, what you brought out is very vivid, that there's the visible warfare, which is physical, and there's the invisible warfare, which could be cyber or cybertronics. And therefore, both are relevant and both are live and potent. With that said, I think we have time for questions. We don't have time for one more walkthrough, quick walkthrough. Okay, a quick walkthrough. What I'll request is each of my panelists to give a wisdom statement to the audience on Satcom from your perspective. How do you look at just one good statement which they can carry from here as part of our session? So I'll start with Navjot and then we'll go from the left.
Satcom is here to stay, and it will have to work in a contested environment. So not only will you have to look at doctrinal technological changes, but possibly doctrinal shifts also. Like you have something like, you need to train to work in an environment where disruptions will take place. Long time back, when there was a threat of the nuclear hang, the communication mode was the most secure, reliable communication that will get through was the Morse code. So people trained on it. So now it's a reality. Satcom is a potent weapon, but it will be disrupted. We need to work through it. It's a given. And another way is like the delegated command also, rather than centralist approach. We have to have something called, we maintain combat effectiveness even when under attack. And one of the aspects that Donald brought out, multi-orbital capability, jotted down, it's very correct. And we have to work through it. AI is coming in a big way. So AI-enabled Satcom networks, possibly dynamic routing, threat detection, automatic network optimization. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. I think modern conflicts teach us, to your point, sir, the fact that you cannot rely on a single bearer, you cannot rely on single technology, and I think that in the Satcom space, multi-orbit strategy has to be the norm. It's no longer a luxury or something fancy, it is the norm, and modern departments of defense are really shaping the forward-looking strategy around multi-orbit strategies and solutions. So it used to be something that was thought of as perhaps a marketing gimmick, but today we are learning the hard lessons from the conflicts that it has to be the essential part of the forward-looking planning for any defense.
Thank you. To you, Siddhartha.
I believe that Satcom has numerous applications in day-to-day and real-world requirements. It always starts with defense because they are the first consumers where R&D comes in, but even from a day-to-day activities or drones or education or health and smart applications in rural areas. So as a country, I think Satcom is a need of the hour, and it will only increase in terms of how much we can consume and the kind of solutions that we can come out with. So looking forward to the future of Satcom.
Right.
Thank you.
Sorry. If I have a crystal ball, I think in 5 years' time, satellite is no longer taking a back seat. We should be in the front seat. Why I say that, I'm seeing more and more satellite are being used, and we're not just replacing, we're becoming the mainstream. I think, cables, subsea cables are under threat, and satellite costs are getting, more economical. I personally think that my vision will be 5 years' time, satellite become, the mainstream.
Of course, it's a security, and I think, of course, my takeaway is that anything that has IP address can be hacked, and especially in the world of mythos and the cable today, I think it can only accelerate this process. Even amateurs who didn't know how to hack stuff can use AI today to hack things, and I think it's extremely important to secure them, and I think cyber resilience has to be engineered into every layer. And my only thing to the audience here, if there are anyone on the buying side, when you have your vendors who declare in the procurement process that malicious code certificate, I think you need to trust but verify. So the only way to verify is have the right tools, ensure that there is no backdoors in the firmware, which is from the OEM, could be intentional or unintentional, because it's a first-hand experience that we've actually seen it, we've experienced it.
Thank you.
Sir, may I add one?
Yeah, please.
One aspect is the most important, in fact, for India, keeping in mind the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, we should look in for Indianization. Satcom, wherever feasible, we should give a fillip to indigenous products. That will, especially for the defense perspective, that will keep us in good stead.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Yeah, please.
Yeah, Alexander Joik, I have a remark and a question. What I did not hear today is the word mesh. I was doing VSAT networks over the last 30 years in India, and most of them, strategic networks, they were gateway-less, they were meshed, they were built in a way that you cannot bring them down so easily. Without going now in details, also I think you should have added not only the ground station and cyber, you should have added the human factor. because there's a lot of stupidity which was going in these hacks around the world, yeah, because it was not protected with the passwords and so on. I think we were overcoming that in the meantime. There's another aspect, simple aspects, like in India, and I remember they had, in certain networks, they were going that far that they said, okay, we don't care what's the link budget, we will always add 50 or 60 watt amplifiers so that we could replace the modem. We will not compromise any modem technology. In the worst case, we take it out, we replace it by an SEPC modem. So I think there had been a lot of strategies implemented by Signal Department long time ago, and there, of course, it should be multi-orbit and so on, but I think there are people building secure networks and others they try to break in, and this will be always the same story. The people who try to break in, they have the bigger budget and they have the better, let's say, the shorter command lines, yeah? But I think India is prepared, yeah, in many aspects. They can always get better, but they are working on that since a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay.
Hi sir, my name is Shubhajit. I work with a company called Astrogate Labs. So in that day, it was a very enriching discussion, but just had a query that we were not discussing something as simple as lasercom we didn't bring that into the equation. While lasercom solves a lot of problems that we have discussed, congestion, spoofing, and it is the need of the hour because it also brings spectrum cost equations into the picture. And the form factor. So we have a 10 Gbps terminal, which is 1U size. We have given it to ISRO. And I was hoping that we could have discussed a bit on that also.
You talked of laser communication. Okay, good. Thank you. You know, I said there'll be some ignorance. Thank you for filling it in. Thanks a lot. Okay, I think there's time for no more questions. Firstly, I'll thank the audience for a very patient listening and very good value adds that we got for a question given by Donald and the kind of comments and remarks that we got thereafter. Is now, and to my fellow panelists for being so brilliant. I think the wisdom that they spoke about is a good takeaway for all of us. I'll just quickly summarize. The first is that multi-orbital, multi-band integration is inevitable, and we are looking at GEO, MEO, LEO, NEO, 5G, 6G. Let's not forget that. I think that's one very good takeaway, and thank you for that. The second is secure communication is the way forward, and I think therefore quantum secure communications in Satcom are more or less, again, inevitable reality. The third is that all networks today need to be AI driven, and whether it is spectrum congestion or spectrum allocation, I think AI will play a major role there as well. So we need to be cognizant of that. The fourth is something that we were spoken to, that we are getting into direct-to-device SATCOMs. I think that is where that's a new paradigm that's going to come up, and the terrestrial communication which all of us carry may actually become traditional very soon if this comes up in the next 5 years or so. And the last, which has not been talked of, but alluded to, laser communication and other forms of communication are really coming up. Not only laser, I find today we had the ICT convergence, information communication technology, which brought computers into our mobile phones. I think there's a ICRT with 5G, 6G touching gigahertz now, which was the domain of radars earlier. Actually, you're getting into a convergence of information, communication, and radar technologies. And I think with that paradigm, we should view future of Army, Navy, Air Force, and commercial space when it comes to SATCOM. Thank you very much. It's been a very good learning for us here being part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you for a highly insightful session. I request the dignitaries to join us for a photograph. Please give a huge round of applause for our distinguished panel.